much the same again. What we're going to do now is we're going to drive this bearing, the main bearing, out of here. So I'll be taking the this off, which holds the oil seal in, and then again just heating up the casing and knocking the bearing through. But as I say, this time the problem is we're actually going to have to put the socket or whatever we find actually on the rollers of the bearing itself, so it's a bit more awkward, especially mainly because we don't want to damage the bearing, because I think we can reuse that one without any problem. I'll inspect it properly, but it looks fine to me. It's got some oil on it. The bearing, the dry side bearing, this bearing had been left without oil on, and it feels gritty. I don't like it at all. And it started to rust, whereas this one should be okay. So if we can get it out without damaging it, then that's great. So I'm going to undo these 3 screws, take this oil carrier off, which means that we'll then be able to drift the bearing out. Okay, so these 3 screws are done up very tight. They don't want to come off with a normal screwdriver. So I've got my impact driver. So that's the driver. When you hit the end, it turns the screw for you, and that will hopefully be just enough to free the screw off. Sorry, I'm just thinking about, of course I'm being lazy, I haven't taken these 2 studs off, and I think I will take them off. I'll take those 2 studs off first, because I'm just being lazy and they'll only be in the way. I'll get those out, and then we'll then we'll do the bearing, because these will probably only be in my way if I leave them on. So I'll take them off now. Okay, so to take the stud out, I've got 2 nuts which I've put onto the end of the stud. I'm going to lock them together tightly, so they're really locked together now. And then I'm going to undo the bottom of the nuts, and there, that's, oh no, I was going to say that's bringing our stud out, but it's not, it's just turning. This stud does not want to come out. I do have a stud extractor somewhere, but I find it doesn't work very well. So I'm using this method, but even this method isn't working. So I'm going to do these nuts up really tight. And then I'm going to heat the casing again to expand it, and then that should, because obviously this stud is in pretty tight. So I'm going to heat the casing, and then I'll give it another go. Right, I've heated the case up, and let's see if this stud will come out now. Yeah, there, straight out now. A little bit of heat, and out it comes. I'm just going to loosen these nuts off when I've still got the stud in, because I did them up very tight. There we go. Just so I can get them off again when the stud's out. That's the gearbox stud. Now, if I've got that stud extractor, I'll give it another go. It's never worked for me, that damn stud extractor. Here it is. Yeah, it did eventually. It did take a few bites. Yeah, that's what I'm, oh God. That's what I was worried about. It's now jammed on the stud. The stud extractor is jammed on the stud. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not happy. It's not a great bit of kit. I'll try it again. dear. So now I've somehow got to get the extractor off the damn stud, and I think the only way I can do that is to tighten it back up again. And this time I'll go back to using the 2 nuts again. Great. Yeah, I wonder if I can pull that, if I could have pulled that out. I don't think if I could have pulled that out while it was in situ, it would have released, but oh well, I don't know. Anyway, it loosened it enough that I can now just take it out with a pair of moles. So a bit of a palaver, but I'm glad we got those studs out, because they need, otherwise I'd leave them in, and then when I came to rebuild the gearbox they'd be in the way and all that, and you know, lazy people take the most trouble. Going back to my dear old mother, who used to say that to me all the time, you know, can't be bothered to take the studs out, and it's going to make more work for you in the long run. Mind you, having said that, that was quite a bit of work to get those out, but they are out of the way now. And that means I can get back to where we were, which is now getting this flat on the bench, fairly flat. Yeah, we've just got the dowels in the way. Then I can put the impact driver on these 3 screws. There you go, and I just loosen them off. There we go. They're all nice and loose now. There we go, and that should just, there we go, and then the oil seal carrier just comes off, it's just stuck on by its gasket. There we go, and so we can now see that the final drive bearing for the gearbox. And so I'm going to again heat the casing up around here and then drive it out from the inside. But as I've said, the only problem is I'm actually going to be driving, when we see that, I'm actually driving onto the roller bearings themselves, because you can't get to the casing. So I just need to find the right size socket that will just go on those rollers, and then we'll heat up the casing and have a go at driving those out. Okay, I'm just finishing off heating up the casing around this gearbox main drive bearing, output bearing. I'll give it a bit more. What I've done is I've already taken out the that small layshaft needle roller bearing. I've already driven that one out. Just means that I can heat up the this bearing a bit more easily. So I just drove that out again. Just found a socket roughly the right size and drove that bearing out. Just means it's a bit easier to heat up the casing around this drive bearing. Again, well, I'm a bit worried because we can't get to the outer race to drive it out. We have to drive it out actually on the bearing rollers themselves. Okay, we'll try that. So we're going to turn it over because we have to drive it out from the inside. So that means I'm going to get some wood blocks, because otherwise we're trying to drive the bearing out into the bench, which isn't going to work. I've got my socket, just about the right size to sit on the bearing rollers. It's good, good. Came out with that easily, which is great because can we see that bearing on the bench there? Because that means the chances of us having damaged it are small. Yeah. Again, I'm pleased to find out that all the bearings have been fitted with the lettering facing outwards. If we're going to reuse this bearing, I think we are. It's very important that we do fit it the way it came out, and it did come out with the lettering facing outwards, which I've always been taught was the sort of convention. I'm never quite sure whether this needs to be done or why or whatever, but that's why I was sort of always told. And sure enough, in this engine, all the bearings have had their lettering facing outwards. So I don't know, that's the convention, so I stick to it. And I know that that's the way that that's going to go back in. I'll check it, but I'm pretty sure that bearing's all okay. It's a pretty expensive bearing, that one. So only replace it if necessary. On the other hand, you know, to replace this bearing, you've got to take virtually the whole bike apart. So if there is any doubt at all, then obviously we replace it. Obviously the same with the main bearings and so on. Any doubt at all, replace, because the amount of labour and that involved in taking the whole damn thing apart again, just it's not worth the sort of 50 quid or whatever it is it's going to cost you for the bearing. Okie dokie, so that's all the all the parts removed from the three main crankcases, ready to go down to be blast cleaned. So the next job we'll do will be to prepare the cylinder barrels, the cylinder head, and the rocker boxes. They've all got to be completely stripped. So that's the next job we'll do. Again, ready to take those down to be blasted.